All right, well, welcome to episode number 33 of the Oklahoma Weather Show. Today is September 3rd, basically getting ready to say goodbye to summer, hello to fall, and our second severe weather season is just right around the corner, and that's why we are bringing on veteran storm chaser from KOCO, Chris Lee. You probably heard him a whole lot on television, but you probably don't see him a whole lot. So today we're going to talk to Chris and all sorts of storm stories that we can all share together. Meteorologist Brad Show. Brad Souter in charge of today's show. Brad, take it away, buddy.
Hey guys, yeah, I thought Chris would be a great person to get on here, because Chris has been with KOCO for what, 77 years, and no, Chris, how long has it been now? What, 30, 35 years, 36 years?
Uh, you're adding years. I like that. That's helpful. I started here right out of grade school in 1977. So
Wow.
I wasn't a math. I wasn't good in math, but somewhere around 30 something 7 years. So that's uh, that's where we're at right now.
Now, Chris, how many tornadoes have you seen? In the military, a lot of times back in World War II, they would put a little bomb on the side of their airplane for every time they dropped a bomb. If we had to put a little tornado on the side of your car for every time that you saw a tornado, how many do you think you'd have?
I get asked that a lot, and somewhere I don't know, but because of why I do it and how I do it, it's never real important to count. But I would say it's well over 100, probably several hundred.
Wow.
I've seen. I mean, we saw 12 in one day. That was obviously a very rare day, but if you look at that and think over the course of 30 years of doing this, I mean, I track what I do back to Wichita Falls. Wichita Falls happened in 1979, and that was one of the first major news stories that I covered. And I realized comes from something predictable. So that's kind of how I started doing it.
So, Chris, walk us through that. I know right now you're in Logan County, and you've got the Damon Lane mobile there behind you. If you see him driving around town now, you'll know it's Chris Lee because he has a giant Damon head on the side of the vehicle. It's pretty cool. But that's Chris Lee. I think Mark's getting one too, isn't he? Mark's going to get one of those Damon vehicles.
Identical, the look exactly the same.
Okay. All right, so it's either Mark Franklin or Chris Lee driving around, and they've got all sorts of cool stuff on there. There's Damon now, but we've got the satellite internet data coming in from them. We've got all sorts of cameras all over that thing. And Chris, I know it's come a long way since you started chasing a number of years ago. Walk us into that. I'd be interested to know. I don't know this about you, but whose idea was it to start chasing storms, and what was it like in the early days at KOCO with storm chasing?
I mean, I'm a news person. What I do is I cover news, and what I've always done, what I like to do is breaking news. There's something going on right now. I want to be there, and I want to be telling people about it and getting pictures of it. And I've been that way since I got into the business. And like I said, a couple of years in, you start seeing storms, and you realize this is very, very important to people here. And unlike fires or car accidents or most breaking news stories, it's predictable. You can say there's a good chance of there being, for example, over the weekend we had some storms up north. Well, we knew, several days out that was a possibility, and by that morning we knew enough to have, people up there. It's it's breaking news, but there's a certain amount of predictability, and that's what kind of intrigued me. And back in the 70s, there was a group down at the Severe Storms Lab down in Norman. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that. Was doing some what they call ground truth on a new product that they had out called Doppler radar, and they were trying to figure out what Doppler radar was trying to tell them by sending crews out in the field to be where the signatures were going to be on the radar. And those were some of the first.
He's leaving us hanging. Some of the first Man, wow.
Well, and I guess we probably got to explain that Chris is out on assignment, even though we have him on the show today. He's also kind of wearing many hats. He's a photog, and he's in Logan County. He'll probably pop back in just a little bit. I'll send him another invite. But you have to think a lot about what Chris has probably seen since the late 70s. I mean, we're all pretty young, and so when we look at storm chasing, we've been in a good amount of technology, and we've seen a fair amount of technology since our career started. But Chris started back in the day when, if you wanted to, get a live picture back to a station, you had a huge microwave truck, you had a satellite truck, and so it was pretty challenging. But yet, it's those type of chasers that I probably respect the most, because chasing is easy nowadays. All you really need is a cell phone. I mean, here Chris is. He's out in Logan County, and he's able to send us a picture.
Chris, we've all worked with Chris, and what people don't know about him at home is he is one of the hardest working guys and most loyal guys that you will ever work with in this industry. And we really mean that. We're not just saying that because he's on the show today, but he works harder than anybody else, and he's really good at what he does. He's always trying to make everything look the best and just capture the story, and he's got an eye for it. He really does.
I would say, I mean, I have a lot of stories with Chris Lee, and I remember the first time that I interviewed at KOCO. Rick Mitchell said, all right, now you're going to go out and talk to Chris Lee. And it was in the middle of July. And you know how it is out here in the middle of July. It's about 100 degrees. It's hot. It's, hardly any wind. And the one thing I noticed first about Chris Lee is that if you ask him about storm chasing, he could sit down and talk to you for about 2 or 3 hours straight. So we're outside in the parking lot at KOCO, and I'm wearing a suit, and I am sweating like crazy. But I was so intrigued by everything that he was saying that I had to that the sweating didn't really seem to bother me. Hey, Chris, are you back?
I'm back, but you notice my picture kind of went away there. I'm a little blue guy now. I don't know.
Little blue man. Hey, Chris, what we were talking about.
We were really talking bad. You're lucky you missed that.
That's what I'm afraid of. Well, I'm going. You're going to talk about me.
Yeah, it's a good thing that these videos we put on YouTube don't live forever, right? I'm being sarcastic. Chris, we were actually talking about how much chasing has changed, and these days, you can take a picture and send back live video with your cell phone. But back in the 70s, different story. Kind of talk us through what your first chase was like, and what chasing was like back in the 70s.
Well, it was so different. There were no computers. There were no cell phones. There were no. I mean, we were lucky in that we had two-way equipped cars, so we had a method of getting information from the TV station out to the people in the field. But you had to have a base meteorologist. You had to have somebody back at the station or back at your base telling you what was going on, telling you how changes were happening, because there was no real-time radar, there was no real-time data coming in, and we were also doing everything for archiving. Our video was all being shot for later. There was no trying to go live. That rarely happened, and we could do that via microwave within 30 miles of the city, but. I think somewhere in the 80s, I actually did get a tornado on live, and it was just a very, very rare event around Marshall. But that was the thing. You had to have it was a very much a team. It wasn't a single, get in the car and try to outsmart the storms thing. You had to have a meteorologist back there feeding you information. I remember that's the way I learned from Severe Storms Lab had that. I remember the Nowcaster that they had that was always giving information.
Chris, was there any sort of a way to get on air as far as driving? I know obviously you didn't have phones. Were you able to be via radio on air?
We could. We very rarely did. We usually had to stop. The original trucks that I built, which are still kind of a version of what we have now, were set up to set up on a hill. I don't have a big tall mast, so I had to find a hill which is good for spotting, good for sending a signal back. but it requires getting ahead of the storm, being somewhere where you can see the storm for 10 or 15 minutes, do a live shot, and then move on. But that's kind of the way it originally was as far as live, was just hit or miss from, finding a hill within range, getting a shot up, showing what you had, and then racing on after the storm again. And of course, somewhere in there, early 80s, we got live gear in the helicopter, which kind of changes the entire scope of things too. We did, and that's changed too, because again, with the helicopter, you got to have good information coming to the helicopter. You don't want somebody out there not knowing what it is they're dealing with.
Chris, one thing I've always wanted to know, because I came to Oklahoma City back in 2009, and before I was in OKC, I was down in Abilene, Texas, and from a television market standpoint, the markets aren't that far from each other. There's just really one market in between Abilene and OKC, and that would be Lawton, Wichita Falls. But yet, the way that we handle storms is completely different. It was a small market 165, so we didn't have helicopters, and I didn't even have really any storm chasers. But then you go up the road, completely different. And the same thing can really be said about Dallas. If you look at Dallas or Tulsa or Wichita, Kansas, the way that they handle severe storm chasing and the way that we handle severe storm chasing here in OKC, completely different. How much has on-air severe weather coverage changed since you started? Because nowadays we've realized the impacts that thunderstorms can have on people, even if they're not quote unquote severe. Has it always been that way, where we would cut in and do wall-to-wall coverage on non-tornadic storms, or is that something that just recently happened in the last couple decades?
I think it's been the last couple of decades, but it's not been, you say recent, I think it's something that's kind of evolved. I think part of it is that the you realize how important weather is to people, and it's kind of a universal. As far as we go out and do a news story, and we may do a story on a fire or an event, and it affects the people in that area or on the drive on that road, or we're in that neighborhood. But weather affects us all, and whether we're affected by the tornado or the severe weather event this time, we're all interested in whether it is going to affect us and what we need to do and to be ready for it next time. And what we found is promotionally wise, you can't buy the kind of promotions you would get just by being on the air and showing the types of things that are going on, and that lets people know that, hey, next time when something big is going on, these people are going to be all over it. And I think we almost discovered that as a market. It became we started getting all these tools that we have, as technology grew and we realized how important weather was. We went through a period in the 90s where managers would come to me, the people in charge of budget would come to me and say, what do you need? What would help you? What can we spend money on, basically, which, as you know, in a TV station is almost unheard of. That's not something that happens every day. Let's put it that way. I mean, but it's that important. It's that important to our viewers, and therefore that important to us.
Have you ever been scared when you're chasing?
Yes.
He's being honest.
Yeah, I have to say, probably the most scared I've ever been was May 31st of last year, when I was in there with a whole bunch of other chasers. I'm sure you've seen the video and heard all the stories. My first time, I don't like to chase at night, and I was out in western Oklahoma, and we had almost called it off. As a matter of fact, we had called it off. We were ready to. That was a chase back in the days. I'm trying to remember exactly. Probably early '80s. We had a chase. There were storms that never really came across the border. I was near the town of Shattuck, and we called it off and said, "Okay, it's getting dark. The storms just haven't come across." And I got in the car, and on the scanner, when I got the thing I meant to say is that we had to stop for a payphone to call back to the station and find out what's going on. So I stopped for a payphone, got back in the car, and then the I heard on the scanner, it's on the ground again, and I looked from my hilltop and I could see it. It was probably still right along the border, but it was on the ground again and coming across towards Oklahoma. And it hit the town of Shattuck that day, but I was kind of out in an area where I wasn't real familiar, and I got to an area where I didn't know if the roads went through going the way I needed to go, and there was a volunteer fireman there, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you just follow this road, it goes right on through." Well, it kind of winds around in the hills back there, and I got down in there, and I couldn't tell which direction was what, and I could hear the wind howling down the canyon, and kind of that distinctive noise that a tornado makes. Is that the noise I'm hearing, or I'm just hearing wind? Where is it? I don't see anything. I don't even know which direction I would go. That I recall that being a very, very bad situation to be in. That was probably the first time I kind of scared myself in being. And that was also a time when we used to go out by ourselves. I used to go out alone. And I don't do that anymore for a lot of reasons. One, there's a lot of more things to do. But second, driving, you always have to have a person who's for lack of a better word, a designated driver. Someone who is paying more attention to the road than anything else. And at some point, if you're the person looking at the clouds and looking at the tornado and shooting video, you're not driving, and that's a really bad thing. So those are the two things. I changed my entire philosophy at night, and always have at least one other person with me.
Chris, you've seen a lot, not just tornadoes, but you and I were talking the other day about your experience with Katrina. I'll have you get into that, but what can you name? Everyone seems to always remember the storms that they've covered. They can name the dates, the towns that were affected. What are your top 5 big weather events that you've covered? I know this is really putting you on the spot, but what would you think the storms that have made the biggest impression on you? What would you say if you had to name 5? What would come to mind?
Well, wow.
I know that's difficult, and I'm not trying to take away the lives that these storms have affected, because everybody has had an experience with the storm, but some people may have not been on the right side of a storm that was huge, but the person that was too close. What are your big 5 storm stories that you'd have to go through? I mean, would El Reno is probably one of them?
The first one would be Wichita Falls. I mean, that was the one that kind of was, to me, a wake-up. Was
that 79 you were saying?
It was 79, and I remember going down there. I was not there for the tornado, but I was assigned to go down there. Interesting part of the story is we had a reporter who had just moved up from there, and he basically told the news director, "I'm going. Do you want me to take a camera?" And I said, "Well, he's taking a camera. I'll go with him." We almost weren't assigned. We just kind of said, "Okay, we'll go down there." I had no idea what I was getting into, both from a news standpoint, not being fairly new to the business, and also from a standpoint of there wasn't enough information coming out to know what kind of damage there was down there. But we got there after dark. We shot a bunch of stuff. He was looking for family, which we didn't find until the next day. And we got to the area where we kind of got a couple hours sleep and woke up, and we were at the command post, which was a supermarket. And I will never forget when daylight came, you could turn 360 degrees and literally not see anything that wasn't in some way damaged by the tornado. I mean, it was just an awesome, unbelievable sight. And I just remember thinking, I can't show that on my camera. I just can't. I can show you pictures, but you'll never believe what I'm seeing. Fortunately, we did have the helicopter came down and did a very good job of showing what was down there. But that to me was kind of, like I said, that kind of to me started the whole thing of how serious this is. May 3rd was a very big day in that that was the first time I remember calling home and saying, this tornado is. I live in Edmond. My wife is in Edmond, and I called and I said, this tornado is not headed for the house. But there are so many tornadoes out here. If there's one anywhere close to you, get in the closet, because this is. Usually tornadoes are the average tornado lasts less than 10 minutes, and this thing had been on the ground for about an hour and a half at that point. That was you get so focused on what you're doing I was very focused on getting video, setting up live shots, going back, getting ahead. It wasn't until it was about Newcastle I realized it is really going to go through Oklahoma City. I mean, it really is going to go through Oklahoma City and a major metropolitan area. Up until that point, it was kind of I was doing what I do, trying to follow along and just be where I needed to be. Let's see. Probably, I guess I would have to put May 31st in there just as an unforgettable thing because this last storm season last year was very interesting in that we really only had 3 or 4 big days, but they were very big days. And I remember thinking as the day we'd had pretty good luck and been where we needed to be and gotten good pictures and gotten stuff on the air for people. And so I think May 31st, I was kind of still in that mode. I know what I'm doing. I'm not worried about, the tornado taking a strange track or anything like that. Things have gone really well this season. And it kind of, when that thing took off like it did, it just was knowing, okay, I'm in a really very bad place, and I just have to get out of here.
I remember, Chris, on air, at one point when we pulled up your stream and that tornado had to, I mean, it was almost like you could just reach out and touch it. You were that close. And I said, you are way too close to that thing. And that night when we were still doing our wall-to-wall coverage and you walked in and we spoke live on air, you had this look in your face that I hadn't seen in a while. A lot of times, if Chris Lee, what you see, in the newsroom is basically how he is out in the field. He's very, very chipper, always smiling. You did not smile at all, and you just had this expression on your face, and I'll never forget it. That, wow, I can't believe I just walked out of that alive.
Well, and to be honest with you, when they said there were fatalities, I knew they would be chasers because there wasn't as much reason for the people to be there, particularly in vehicles, except to be chasing that storm. Fortunately, we were very lucky that area that didn't go through the town of El Reno or through any major populated areas. But that was one of the strangest things I've seen, in that it was almost like, I describe it as a carousel of you had the main tornado that was like 2 miles across, yet there were tornadoes, vortices circulating around like horses on a merry-go-round around the major circulation. And those, if you happen to get in the way of one of those, it was bad anywhere in there, but if you happen to get into one of those, it was deadly, really.
There were at least four chasers killed in the El Reno tornado, and of course, those are the ones we know of. There were several other people killed in cars, and we don't necessarily know if those were just amateur chasers. Hey, Dad, let's go get in the car and go chase this storm. We will probably never know that. So you're right. I mean, chasers did die that day, and I mean, it's just hard to believe that. I mean, everyone always knew that there would be a day that changes everything. But I mean, did you think that was the storm when you saw it setting up? Did you say, "Hey, this is going to be one for the history books"?
Honestly, no. I mean, I knew it was a very volatile day, and I don't think there was any question there would be tornadoes. What was happening, and I'm not a meteorologist. Just my observation is there was some sort of cell merger going on. Usually, when that happens, you kind of take a break. The tornado kind of backs off for a few minutes. The circulation has to kind of reform, and this one was totally the opposite. It just intensified really rapidly. I will say, 2014. I've been doing this, as you said, 37 years. 2014, I got a storm shelter. I'm not at home. My wife is in PR, so a lot of times when things are going on, she's not home. But I'd always felt like, the chances of a specific point being hit are not that great. And for whatever reason, I'd never bought a storm shelter, and I did not buy a storm shelter because of May 31st. I bought a storm shelter because of May 19th, because the tornado that was near Edmond went basically right over my house. It was fairly weak when it did. It did damage several blocks away, but it certainly pointed out to me what could happen and the need to be prepared.
What do you think, Jonathan? I know you're off today. What?
Yeah, I got
your thoughts. What do you think?
I got two questions for Chris. So here's part one, Chris. What's the weirdest tornado you've ever seen? That just you're like, what?
Well, I've seen what happens sometimes, and I when you're first learning about tornadoes, and I guess during the 70s, there was everybody was learning about tornadoes. They have what they call, I don't know if you've ever seen a needle funnel, but sometimes around the main circulation there will be a very tiny tornado. A lot of times it's not even anywhere near where it's supposed to be. My guess is it's probably just some little eddy that spins up behind the main circulation, but they're really weird looking. A needle funnel, they look about like the width of a telephone pole. And I've seen those a couple of times, and like I said, it kind of fits in the category which you were talking about, because it doesn't, it's not where it's supposed to be, but there's no question what it is. Let's see. And the other thing I guess I would say is we talked about seeing a lot of tornadoes in one day. I was up by Moreland one day. It was an area just north of Woodward, and we saw 12 tornadoes in one day. And we thought there would be some circulation. There's a fairly low chance of tornadoes, and we went to set up. We were set up with our satellite truck, and we were going to do a live shot showing the area of rotation. And right before we went on the air, I was with reporter Jane Braden, who is not a chaser, just happened to be going out with me that day. Lucky her. And she goes, I said, I can't, what is that? I can't tell what that is. There's dust on the ground right underneath the wall cloud. And so I zoom in, and you can see the debris. There's a very definite signature the debris does when the circulation and all the debris comes up around the circulation. And I go, it's a tornado. It's on the ground right now. Well, at that point, the meteorologist was saying, Jane Braden, what do you see? She goes, well, I think I see a tornado. But it just kind of surprised us that it happened, first of all, that quickly, and that in some ways it had happened at all. I was told later those are, some people refer to those as land spouts, that they're much more low-level circulation, because it wasn't a very destructive tornado, and it really didn't go anywhere. It was there for a better part of an hour and moved maybe a half a mile.
Mm-hmm. Land spout, I think, typically up to about EF1 is some of their maximum capacity, but I mean that's still a dangerous storm.
Yeah, I don't think I would have wanted to go run out in the field and play tag with it. But it was quite something to see, and because it didn't move and we had a satellite shot set up, we just sat there and watched it for an hour. They actually cleared. We were on CNN satellite, and they bumped people off behind us so that we could keep our shot up. And I think people all over the country took it. It was right during news. It was like 5:30, 6 o'clock. So people all over the country took it during their news. And, they got calls from people I hadn't heard from in a while.
Okay, question number 2. What's the future of storm chasing 5 years from now and 10 years from now?
Wow. I don't know. You see these people in their armored vehicles, and they're with all the technology they have. I guess what scares me about it is we're dealing with an awful lot of traffic out here. I mean, we're trying to cover storms in rural areas where there aren't a lot of roads, and there are an awful lot of people using those roads. There's an awful lot of people out chasing. I mean, it's gone from dozens of people to hundreds of people, and I'm not sure by next year. There's a new movie out. There's been all this Discovery Channel interest. We may be dealing with thousands of people. I really see it as an issue, certainly for safety. Because what happens is you just can't get from point A to point B, and if at some point, let's say your escape route is a gravel road that goes south, and there are 100 other people that need to go down that gravel road, you're only going to go as fast as the slowest person going down that road. And if there happens to be a tractor or a combine, or God forbid the road's washed out, you're dealing with an awful lot of traffic on roads that weren't meant to do that. And I think where I'm going with that is I wonder how dangerous it will become, and whether that will start. The future is going to be that storm chasing is going to become difficult to do, to remain mobile. Okay, go a little different direction with that. The use of drones, I think, is going to change a lot of things, and I would not be at all surprised to see that happen with storms. I mean, the ability to track storms without having to be there to put yourself in danger, I think, is a huge it would be a huge advantage.
Who's going to be able to afford that, you think? I mean, because drones definitely are the future. The drones that the average storm chaser can afford, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. But the battery life on those is so short, they won't be able to get in position. I mean, we truly need a military-grade UAV that's going to be able to fly that long. I mean, do you think? I don't know a whole lot about UAVs, but do you think there will be people that can get their hands on some of those things?
Obviously, that's going to start with government research and people who have major science grants that have that kind of money. But the personal drones, the things that people are using, are just getting better and better. So I think it's just a matter of time before the battery technology and the motor technology, and like I said, your battery life goes from 15 minutes to 30 minutes to 40 minutes. Your speeds will increase. The question becomes, what kind of regulations they're going to have on them, because that's an issue that the government is dealing with. Just trying to keep these things out of the way of aircraft. We already have. I cannot imagine. We fly a helicopter around a thunderstorm. Now that sounds like it's a dangerous thing, but we have this zoom lens, and Brad could probably attest to that because he actually gets up and does it. We have a zoom lens where we can look from 1,200 feet in the air. We can look at things on the ground, and see whether a guy's smiling or not. So I mean, it's quite a zoom lens, and we can be where it looks like we're right there where the tornado is. We're actually several miles away. So there's a certain, we know in terms of safety, but if you know that there are also going to be unmanned aircraft that aren't going to talk to you around in that area too, that would certainly complicate doing what we're doing. So a lot of questions still to be answered if drones are the actual future. I think at least I hope the armored vehicles are a fad, where people actually trying to get into the storm. Okay, been there, done that, move on to something else. Because I don't see that. Honestly, what worries me about that is I see that ending badly for somebody, whether they either didn't build the vehicle the way it should have been built, or whether they get into something they didn't anticipate being there. But I just don't think that's a very good idea, regardless of the vehicle you're in.
Brad, what does FAA say that we have to stay within a thunderstorm? 7 miles or 10 miles?
I don't know, Damon, if there is specific FAA rules per se on that. I know the company we work through, Helicopters Incorporated, I think there is training to tell a pilot to stay within 10 miles of a storm. I don't know if that's a specific law. I could be wrong about that.
Hey, Chris, there you are. So I got a hypothetical question for you. What is
wow? What is that? Just a question
going on there. What is what would be more scary for you, chasing at night or chasing a tornado warning through Oklahoma City?
Wow. I guess it just depends. It depends on the situation in terms of I don't like either of them.
Chris, we have both your streams going here. There you go. You got it.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I tried.
I muted it.
Trying to get rid of the little blue guy down there, but it doesn't seem to work.
Damon got it.
I just feel like that it depends on the situation. May 31st of last year was kind of the worst case in that it got dark while we were in the metro area, while it was a rush hour. I've been chasing at night. I've been chasing through the metro when, if you choose your roads carefully and you are.
I know what he was saying.
Maybe unmute that other one now.
I can unmute it.
Chris, I think we still have you. We just can't hear you right now. Damon's going to unmute you.
Let's see here.
You there? No.
Oh.
No, we got you
Is
now.
that better?
We got you.
Yeah.
That's better.
It's one of those things. It depends on situations and whether you get into an area where you can't deal with the roads you have or deal with the traffic you have. I'm much better about at night. I give it a whole lot more room than I used to, but it used to be that the rule that I had was at night you just don't chase. You just fall in behind and worry about damage because you just can't be safe at night. I think you can have a certain amount of safety, but your margin of error has to be much greater because you can't really see. The issue I've always had at night is that you get a lot of people that see things. You want to see rotation. You got a wall cloud heading into Edmond. It's dark. You're seeing it in lightning flashes, and I hear people telling me, "Oh, I see rotation. I see rotation." Well, I have trouble in lightning flashes determining rotation. It's like looking at things in a strobe where it freezes the movement. Until I see a funnel or something in contact with the ground, it's very difficult to see exactly what you're seeing as far as rotation goes. Now, I've been doing this long enough that certain clouds you just can tell from the shape that it's probably rotating, but that's. And I would say that one of the reasons we chase at night is because it used to be. I think people count on us being out there. I used to think that it just was a matter of, we go out there and we try to get the pictures as best we can, and now it's almost a we need to be there. People are counting on us to show them what's going on, and you have to take that seriously if you're going to do this, as a vocation or as a service that you do for your town and your city.
So what's your thought on that a little bit more? I know sometimes people accuse the media of, 10, 15 years ago, we weren't on this wall-to-wall for storms. We did a little cut-in, they got on, they got off. But now, like you were saying, we're there at nighttime, we're there for sometimes hours at a time. What's your thought on that? Do you think that's just an element of the technology is there, or the demand for it? Why do you think we do that?
Well, I mean, there are competitive things that drive that. It's a station that is showing more than the other stations, but I think beyond.
Come on, Chris.
Okay, we're going to go back to programming because there's not anything happening, and then within a minute, something actually does happen, and you have to cut back in, and then you realize that.
I'm sure I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, Chris.
You have to, right?
It never goes wrong. Chris, you froze on us there.
Let me try to unmute his other mic.
All right.
Did I go away again or am I back?
No, you're back.
I forget what my.
I do want to say that the back and forth that we're having here is the same type of problem that we sometimes run across when we're out chasing in the field. How many times, Chris, are we saying, Chris, check your stream? We lost Chris. We lost Chris.
But we actually have you right now.
And I would have loved to have been in Oklahoma City. I would have loved to have been in Oklahoma City where the coverage is a little better. I'm out here in a rural area. But that, as you said, that is something that affects us every time we go out. The tornadoes don't happen where there's good cellular coverage. So we've even had to invest in technology that we can use satellite data instead of cellular, just for that reason.
Which is still very slow. The satellite data is still not very quick, and it's extremely expensive. I think this is an area that is going to be improved upon over the years to come. Just the quicker data feeds, data streams, just getting that a long way.
That's what if you follow Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, and if you ever look at what they're doing, we went through a phase for a couple years where smartphones, it was all about what new things can we put on a phone. At first it was call waiting a decade ago, and then they put a little camera, and I think a lot of us remember the little 1.2 megapixel camera that you probably had on your flip phone. And then, then they went to these smartphones, but they stopped with adding gadgets to phones, and now they're trying to work on making sure that we had the type of technology out there. So all the cell phone companies now are working a lot more on their service and cellular service, and not so much adding anything else to these phones. I mean, I'm surprised no one's put like a salt and pepper shaker on one of these yet. Your phone.
I mean, yeah, you're right. There's only so much more you can do to a mobile device to make it already more valuable than your computer. Cameras are going to improve on them. It's amazing that there's some vendors now with 16 megapixel, 32 megapixel cameras on their mobile phones. I mean, that's just crazy. And if you're going to transmit 4K video, which some of these cameras can shoot now, if you're going to transmit that live, I mean, talk about the bandwidth consumption. No service plane can handle that yet.
It'll be huge. It will be huge. I mean, but they're putting up new towers. AT&T this past year put up 5 new towers in northern Oklahoma. That's helped out a lot. But a lot of companies, a lot of cell companies, they'll put up cell phone towers, or a lot of times they're leasing them. We ran into a problem at KOCO. I'll tell the story real quick, and I know we got a jet, where our radar was picking up on interference from someone's tower that was installed. And Jonathan remembers it. We had these little green lines that shot out, and we found out that it was someone's tower that was working, I believe, with one of them was a cell tower, another one was someone just using Wi-Fi. But a lot of cell phone companies will lease a tower from another company. So cell phone technology is getting better out there. It's just there's still a lot to catch up on. And Chris Lee in Logan County, it's not like he's in smack dab, middle of the biggest city in the state.
Chris, you were talking to somebody just a second ago. Who are you talking to over there?
I'm with Ariana. We're working on a story out here. I was just trying to, while you all were talking amongst yourselves, try to get her the video she can look at so we can work on our story for this afternoon. Ariana Garza is my reporter today. We get we're assigned different people each day, and she's the lucky one today, or maybe I am.
She's the lucky one. Anyone that can work with Chris Lee. Chris, you make reporting real. I won't say real easy, but you make it a lot easier for a lot of us. Anything else you all want to add real quick before we go on with our day? Brad?
No, I just want to say, Chris, it's great working with you. We really appreciate you sticking with KOCO. I mean, for as long as you have. I mean, there are other media places in town that you could have gone to over the years, and you've been with KOCO the whole ride. I mean, that's really impressive. And I'm sure there's going to be a big watch for you one day when you retire. Not that we want you to. We're
nothing,
not wanting you. I'm not trying to push you out the door here. Please stick around.
For at least another season. Matter of fact, we may be out on Friday. Have you looked at that, David?
Yeah. So it's it might have some funky business with it. So might be a fun little day to go out and chase. So, well, hey Chris, I appreciate you jumping on today and talking about all that you've really gone through. We probably could have talked for a couple more hours, but you got to work, and I got to work.
Yeah, well, we got to get back to it. So,
Yeah. So, well, hey, Chris, I
guess that's where
appreciate
we
it.
leave it, huh?
Yeah. So, Chris, I appreciate it, and I'll see you at the station.
Thanks, Chris.